hour before we get into we try and end these things whenever it starts getting pretty. Of course, the weather is much nicer today than the weather says it should be, historically speaking. But so this will be the last one. We'll give everybody the growing season off after this one, and then we'll start back up again probably in October. Usually what we do October, November. Kind of depends on how long the growing season lasts, because we're try to be understanding of folks and whatever thing is going on. So whenever it starts to slow back down again, we start these things back up. But if there's anybody new, just a little bit about AgVets in general. So a couple of things that I'll remind everybody of, if you've not new, but we've got a few things that are going on right now. We've got our partners are Kentucky Sheep and Goat Association and then Kentucky Horticulture Council. And I know Kentucky Hort Council is still planning an event. I think it's going to be either in central or eastern Kentucky that will be veteran focused as part of this program. And then, so stay tuned for that. I know from what I've been told, it won't be in April. It'll be May or June, because did you all get the AgVet newsletter? Is that how you all found out about tonight's call?
Yes, I get that, and I get your emails.
Yeah, we found out from Sharon.
Yes, sir. That's how we found out.
Okay.
From Sharon.
We found out from Sharon.
Okay, Sharon Spencer.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. If you all want, you don't have to share it over here if you don't want to, but just I'll have my email address up here on the slides whenever we get done with the PowerPoint. If you all want to email me, I'd be happy. If you want, I'll be happy to add you to the newsletter.
Okay.
Just so you all can stay up to date on what's going on, because we try and put what our partners are doing plus what we're doing, anything we're doing AgVet related, in that newsletter. But
okay.
So anyway, that's what I do know. Horticulture Council will have one here in May or June, and that'll be in the newsletter in those months that it happens, whenever it is. And then we'll also have one with Sheep and Goat Association. Again, I don't know for sure when that's going to be, but there is one that's coming up. It's the third Thursday. Taryn, do you know the date of that one at Kentucky?
I'm so sorry, the third Thursday thing? Is that
Yes, the Kentucky Sheep and Goat is having that third Thursday thing in April at KSU.
Let's see. I will, give me a second and I'll find it and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, all right, that'll be fine.
Hey guys, the third Thursday thing in April is farmers markets at KSU.
Okay, it's farmers market, so it's a different day then. I think I
April
emailed that.
April the 20th is talking farmers market and water quality.
Okay. Taryn, I think I emailed that to you last week. If you get a chance to, there's a flyer that I emailed for that Sheep and Goat Association meeting. It's not an AgVet related event, but I just wanted to let everybody know in case anybody has interest in sheep and goats or knows someone who does. But we'll share that one with you all before the end of the day, end of the call. And then they'll also have another one. Sheep and Goat Association will have a veteran focused one. Again, it'll probably be either be in the summer or the fall of this year will be their next one. That'll be veteran focused. But those are our two partners. In addition to KDA, of course, Ms. Sharon Spencer just joined on. Kentucky Department of Agriculture is another critical partner of ours in doing this program. And so Sharon, I know it'll catching you off guard, but if you want to say anything about what you all have going on, we're kind of doing announcements, I guess, before we get started with presentation tonight.
Yeah, hold on just a second. Can you hear me, Spencer?
I can, yeah, I do now.
Okay, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
There we go, maybe. Now?
Yeah.
Okay, I can hear you too. I don't know what happened. I'm having trouble. Our our internet went down here at the house or whatever over the weekend, and I didn't think it was going to affect my computer, but it did. So I apologize for being late. We just we're getting ready to go into full steam ahead or whatever with farmers markets. We've been working with our CSAs and everything as well, but our farmers markets are getting ready to open up. Quite a few of them opened up on April the 1st. So right now, I'm just trying to get ahead of everything and getting our sampling certificates. We do sampling. Anybody that wants to do sampling at a farmer's market, we issue the sampling certificate, but answering a lot of questions, doing a lot of funding workshops and answering a lot of questions with a lot of new folks coming to Kentucky and they're wanting to farm. So we're really excited about that. Folks even from Alaska. And I just talked to a gentleman today or whatever, and he said at their 2 meetings that they had for their market, they had some folks that came in from Alaska that's going to be selling. So I'm really excited. Our markets are going to be really growing and increasing. And so if anybody's got any questions on here about markets or anything just in general, just holler and let me know. Also,
Awesome.
one other thing, we do have our Kentucky Proud Promotional Grant. So if anybody is a Kentucky Proud member, hopefully we've got our Homegrown by Hero folks on here. And if you are a member of Homegrown by Heroes, we do have a Kentucky Proud Promotional Grant that will help you with marketing and advertising. So make for sure that you take advantage of that. That is a 50-50 cost share.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. And we're actually going to touch a little bit about some of those things here in just a second. So it's kind of a good lead in to where we're heading next. So I don't know if I actually introduced myself or not, but I'm Spencer Guinn. I'm with the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development. I'm a business development specialist here, and I've been doing this job for about 6 years. In addition to this, I also farm in Central Kentucky. I've been farming this is my 12th year farming on my own. First generation farmer. I did grow up on a small farm in Southern Kentucky, but there wasn't an opportunity for me to come back to that operation with my folks, and that's perfectly fine. Kind of knew that going into things, but I ended up starting a farm here in Bull County, and so we raise grain, cattle, pork, and vegetables here. So like I said, this is year 12 of doing that. So some days I feel like that I've done something, and some days I still feel like I've got a long way to go, but I think that's part of it. I was talking to a guy that I buy seed from over the weekend, and he said, and he's been farming for 30 plus years. And he said, it's one of those things where there's never a shortage of things to do. You just got to figure out what you want to do and prioritize and go from there. So I think that's the best advice that I've gotten in a while. So, but I wanted to talk to you all a little bit tonight about how to establish your farm business, and that's going to be the title of this. But really, what I'm going to focus on is a little bit about business planning, but really about the acronyms that you may have already heard, depending on your involvement in ag, how long you've been farming here in the state of Kentucky. But just like with KCARD, we throw around a lot of acronyms. And so I kind of want to run through a few of those with you all tonight, just so that you all have an idea of what all might be being said. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Once I do that, just to let you all see the PowerPoint, then I will get started. Is that coming through for you all?
It is.
Perfect. So I like this. Whenever I grew up, every feed store and tractor dealership that I went in as a child had this hanging up. It was "You've been farming long." And I think from what I've been told, these two gentlemen, they're full-grown men now, recreated this picture some years ago. I don't have that version of it, but this is the original one from whenever I was younger. But anyway, that's the starting point. So I mentioned the alphabet soup of acronyms that you'll hear. And so KCARD is one. We'll start there. But then we've got a whole laundry list of other things that you see up on your screen here that I'm going to kind of walk through with you all, and then also share some things that are available through each one of these acronyms and entities where applicable. And then try and talk a little bit about where you might be able to find these folks at. And then I'm going to end because some of these things are very focused on record keeping. Like you got to keep some kind of records to be able to apply and utilize programs under each of these acronym service providers. So we're going to cover a little bit of that as well at the very end. So I gave a little bit of a background about KCARD, but we are the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development. We are a nonprofit organization. So we are our own 501c3 established here in Kentucky, nonprofit. Our mission is to facilitate agricultural and rural business development in this state. We are fortunate to be able to do that because of grants we have received. One of those being through the USDA, which is another acronym we'll cover in a minute, but the USDA Rural Cooperative Development Program, RCDG grant. And then the other one is through the Kentucky Agricultural Development Board, and that's administered by the Kentucky Office of Ag Policy. So what these two grants that we receive annually let us do is be able to talk one-on-one with you all. If you have any questions about business planning, we have a grant facilitation specialist on staff. Their job is to find and keep up with what grants are out there and open, and then how to apply to them. We don't write grants for people here at KCARD, but we do offer people the opportunity to be educated on how to apply to the grants that we know about. If you're applicable, I will say that we do try and let people know, because some of them are extensive grants. So we let people know if you're applicable first, and then how to apply second. And then the other thing we do is after you put together your application, if you'd like, we're happy to do a review of that application before you submit it. So we'll need a couple weeks at least notice. So if the deadline is the end of the month, send us the application the middle of the month before it's due, and then we're happy to review it if you'd like us to. So the biggest federal agency that we deal with is going to be USDA. And so that's the United States Department of Agriculture. If you look, the best way to find out where you need to go to is one, to figure out which office you want to talk to. So under the USDA Service Center, you're going to have a Farm Service Agency, or your FSA office. You're going to have a Natural Resource Conservation Service, or the NRCS office. And then the third one that's under USDA is Rural Development, or your RD office. The first two are probably going to be the most prevalent that you will visit with throughout your farming careers. The Farm Service Agency is going to be a really good opportunity for you all to do a couple things. If you raise any crops, so if you have grasslands, if you do any row cropping, if you grow any produce, Farm Service Agency is who you want to talk to. One, to report what crops you plant and when. So there's a crop reporting element to that office. And then the other one is the lending side. So a lot of times we tell people that FSA is the lender of last resort, but they have a really good program that's available to beginning farmers. They also have programs that are available to veterans that you go in to these programs. So I'm going to use an example of buying, say you want to buy some livestock, buy some cattle, and you need a loan to do that. If you go to an FSA office, talk to them, they can, on equipment and livestock, they can go up to 7 years, amortize that loan over a 7-year period, and then they're going to have a reduced interest rate from what a commercial bank or an ag credit organization would have. I don't know what it is right now. I haven't talked to them or looked it up in a while. Of course, interest rates continue to climb, but they will have a lower rate than what you'll get from public or private banks. But they are there to lend you money if you need it. And like I said, with the beginning farmers and veteran farmers, the nice thing that they do is it's whenever you apply, you'll go into the same pot of money that everyone else can have access to. But being able to check the box that you're a beginning farmer or a veteran farmer, that gets you access to, it's not really a separate pool of money. But if, say you apply, their fiscal year runs from October 1st to September 30th. That's their fiscal year. So say you apply for a loan in maybe July or August, and you're getting close to the end of their fiscal year. Well, usually they're going to keep some funds available for those beginning farmer and veteran farmer pools of money will be funded more so likely than just a general farmer like myself. If I went in to apply for a loan, being farmering for 10 years plus already, that pool of money may be exhausted, but they usually leave some in reserves for those two specific categories. So that's something to think about. The other thing that I would mention, if you all are raising produce, and you're looking for some way to hedge your bets of growing a crop, they have a really good program called NAP, NAP. I don't remember the acronym for it right now. It's non-insured agricultural product, I think is what it stands for. Don't hold me to that. But if you go into your FSA office and say, I want to talk about NAP insurance, they should know what you're talking about. So it's a really good program that helps you have coverage for vegetables, anything that's not insured traditionally through multi-peril crop insurance. So that would be like corn, wheat, soybeans, pasture, that kind of thing. Anything other than those is going to fall under that on the vegetable production side. Or hops, I think they can even insure hops, but it's not good coverage to start. The way that it works is you have to have, that's where the records that will come into play that we'll talk about later. You keep those records of your harvest and your selling price, and then that goes to build your own annual production history, APH, that is used to define how much you can insure on your crop. Like they'll put a percentage out there every year. So it'll be 50% of your crop to 75% of your crop is what you can insure. It's just that you can, if you have a higher yield, then obviously that 50% number is going to be a higher number of pounds of potatoes or tomatoes than if you have a lower yield. That 50% will be much less. So it gives you a little bit of a benchmark where when you start out, if you have no history, it will just be county yields, county average yields. If there's no average for your county, it'll resort back to the state average yield, which will probably be pretty low. But the nice thing is each year that you add of your own history, one of those county or state averages falls off. And then in 5 years, if you've got good history and good yields, then you've got a pretty good package then. And it's not a very cheap, or excuse me, it's not a very expensive policy to buy. It's about the cheapest insurance you're going to find in the agricultural world. Moving on to the NRCS office, so Natural Resource Conservation Service. They're going to have things for you like EQIP. That's what you're going to see from them. That's a really good program, environmental quality improvement program. I think is what EQIP stands for. It's EQIP. So if you're looking at extending your growing season and having high tunnels to grow produce, if you're looking at rotationally grazing your livestock on your farm, so you want to break up a big chunk of land into smaller pastures or paddocks that you can rotationally graze those animals through, they will help pay for internal fencing and watering systems for those livestock. There's going to be some rules that you've got to follow, and I would encourage you to talk to your NRCS agent about how those would apply to you. But EQIP is probably going to be the biggest thing that you'll go to NRCS for. And then the last one will be rural development. They do a few things. We'll cover those, I think, at the very end. I'll save that one for last. There's one grant that's really a good opportunity for folks, but you got to have some history, you've got to have some records, and you've got to have some pretty lofty growth goals to really make that thing pencil out and make sense for you. The last thing I'll mention about Farm Service Agency, I'm going to go back up to there before I move on, is that's where you get a farm serial number. So a lot of these things that you'll hear people say is, well, do you have a farm serial number? That's how it's like the Social Security number that you have yourself. That's the Social Security number for your farming plot of land. So having that number is what gives you the opportunity to utilize these programs. It's really easy to get. If you don't have one already, or if you don't know if you have one, stop in the FSA office. You can tell them who you are, what your address is. They can search for that. If they don't see one, then what they will do is they'll ask you for a copy of your deed where you purchase your land. Or if you are renting land to farm on, you can also still get a farm serial number that way. They're just going to want to see some kind of written lease agreement that defines how long you have the property and what that property actually is and who owns it. So how do you find these offices? That's the last thing I'll mention. If you look on Google and do USDA Service Center, and then say what county or what city you live in, it will give you the opportunity to click on your county. You'll get the state of the whole United States. Then you narrow it into the state of Kentucky. And then I think it divides the state of Kentucky into east and west. And that's kind of loosely split on I-65. Click which county you're in after you click east or west. And then it'll bring up, this is where you go for the FSA office, for NRCS, and rural development. And I say that to look for that because it may not be the same office. You know, I'm in Boyle County, so I go to either Harrodsburg, which is Mercer County, or Stanford, which is Lincoln County, for FSA. Like I report my crop planting dates and plantings in Mercer County, but then if I do anything with the loan side, I would go to Stanford. And then conversely on NRCS, I go to Harrodsburg. And then for rural development, I think I go to Shelbyville. So that's just where I go to. Now, some counties do everything all there. Most of them these days don't. So just pay attention to that depending on which office you want to go talk to. I'm going to switch gears now. So that's really the biggest federal agency that we deal with, and you'll probably hear about is USDA. The next one I want to cover is a few of the state agencies that are available to you. So the Kentucky Department of Agriculture is there, and I'm going to mention a few of their programs here in just a minute. The nice thing underneath that KDA umbrella is also houses the Kentucky Ag Development Board through the Kentucky Office of Ag Policy, and then also the Kentucky Ag Finance Corporation. And those are two really good entities that provide opportunities to farmers in the state as well. I'll give you a little bit more about them here in a minute. And then the other thing for the state would be the Cooperative Extension Service. So University of Kentucky College of Ag, Food and Environment, or UK CAFE, is the land grant university here in the state that was founded back in the 1800s. And then a little bit later on in the early 1900s, they also identified Kentucky State University as another land grant institution here in Kentucky. So we have two land grant institutions that offer cooperative extension programming. So Sharon mentioned this a little bit, and I just want to throw these emblems up here for you all to see. But we've got a few things that are available to you through Kentucky Proud marketing programs. And that's going to be depending on how you want to market your product. Kentucky Proud is kind of the golden standard. That's the original one that was started here in the state and has been used, I think, you know, Sharon can correct me if I'm wrong, but has been an example for other states around us near and far. Because we've been doing this for quite a while with Kentucky Proud. So that's the very top of the food chain. And then a couple other opportunities that KDA offers is going to be Homegrown by Heroes. So that's any veteran that's on this call. This is available to you. It's a way that you can market your product. So you can be Kentucky Proud registered. If you look in the emblem, it's got Kentucky Proud there at the very bottom, but the emphasis is on soldiers. We try to represent the different branches of the military there through that logo that you see, but Homegrown by Heroes is another branch of Kentucky Proud. And then the third one that I would mention would be Appalachia Proud. So if you're in the eastern part of Kentucky, then that's another opportunity for you as well.
We do. And once they sign up for Kentucky Proud represents anything that is grown, produced, raised, manufactured here in the state of Kentucky that has an agriculture value, showing a direct farm impact. You'd be signed up for Kentucky Proud first, Homegrown by Heroes. If they're not Homegrown by Heroes already, or if they have a friend that wants to sign up, we have to have a copy of their DD 214 if they're out of the military service. And then if they're active, we just need to have a letter from their commanding officer. So we do recognize active military as well as veterans. The Homegrown by Heroes, very excited about that program because that was a program that was started here in Kentucky. And we actually turned that logo and everything over a couple of years ago to the Farmers Veteran Coalition. So other states are copying off from us with that. So we're really excited about that program.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing. And just like with Kentucky Proud, I think other people saw that as a great opportunity, and it was able to spread throughout the nation as a result of that. I just want to cover a little bit of some of the programs that are available for grant opportunities. So these are strictly through KDA. And Sharon, you'll have to correct me if I butcher any of these. I hope I don't, but I'm going to just kind of give the 50,000 foot level. And if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Sharon, and we're happy to help guide you in the right direction. But the first one that I'll mention is the promotional grant through KDA, or as that's commonly referred to as the POP grant. It's a really good program. It's based off of farm impact. So you, if I remember right from looking at the application in the past, you identify how much of your farm's impact will be reflected by this program. So if you're marketing produce and you're doing it either by yourself or with other producers, 10% of that farm impact is what you can apply for. So let's say that you say, I'm going to sell $10,000 worth of produce as a result of these marketing efforts this year. So 10% of that would be $1,000 that you can get. It's a dollar for dollar match. You spend the money up front, and then you get reimbursed, dollar for dollar, everything that you do, with a maximum of $8,000. There's also a lifetime limit for that as well. Sharon, you may have to jump in. I don't remember what that is off the top of my head, but 8,000 is the max annually.
36,000 is the cap for a lifetime.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. And then the other one that I mentioned is farm to fork. So if you're doing like a farm to table dinner in your county, and your county doesn't already have one, I think there's a limit on how many they can do in a county, but it's $750 max that you can apply for, and that covers Kentucky Proud products. And then it also covers, I think, up to $250 worth of promotion. So $500 would be products that either is food or decoration for the event, as long as it's a Kentucky Proud registered product, and then $250 for promotion of the event to try and spread it through your community to get people to come. The next one would be buy local. So that's a way to promote your Kentucky Proud products to local restaurants. They may not already be utilizing Kentucky Proud products. They may be buying everything that they need off of a food truck or Gordon Food Service, Cisco, that kind of thing. But if you've got product that can be served on the menu for them, it may not be something that they have all the time. Maybe you don't have enough of a product to be able to say, this is something I can provide you X number of pounds of tomatoes, for example, every week for the growing season of 13 weeks. Maybe you can say, hey, I've got enough for this. And they have a feature of your farm that day and say, these tomatoes were grown by this farm. Come enjoy this meal today. Maybe you sell beef and you can provide enough hamburger to have a, John Doe Farms ground beef burger. Maybe it's featured one day a week, one day a month, whatever you can provide. That's something that you can use to help maybe bridge that gap between what they can buy product from Cisco or GFS, those food trucks that come and service them, bridge the gap between those prices and what you would do. So it's a way to introduce them to your product and also help you be competitive with your competition, which is those food trucks. Let's see, there's a KDA third-party cost share grant and specialty crop block grant. The first three are the ones that I see people utilize the most. I'll leave those off unless y'all have any questions. For now, I just want to make sure that you know what they are and that they're there. So this is the biggest offering that the bulk of what KDA can offer you all. Switching gears under that, so under KDA, we've got, like I said, Kentucky Office of Ag Policy. And then under that Kentucky Office of Ag Policy is the Kentucky Ag Development Board. So that's going to be, how do they utilize Kentucky Ag Development Fund dollars? This is a direct correlation, as crazy as it sounds. It's part of a master settlements agreement that took place across the nation between cigarette manufacturers back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Took place between cigarette manufacturers and each individual state. Most states, they get this money every year, and it's based on how many people smoke in your state in that year, the previous calendar year. So Kentucky and a couple others, but really Kentucky has really stepped forward and utilized this money for agriculture. Half of it goes to the general fund. Half of it is earmarked for the Kentucky Ag Development Fund, and we're talking millions of dollars each year. So it helps fund things that you see here, like Kentucky Ag Development Fund projects, County Ag Investment Programs, or CAPE. That's one that most every county has. That's a really good program. Each county is different. Like Bull County, you spend $4,000, you get $2,000 back on eligible expenses. So think things like animal husbandry, buying maybe some better bulls or better sires in sheep and goats, or pork. It also helps do things like build structures to store hay in, or if you're selling grain, or excuse me, if you're feeding grains, build a 3 to 5 ton storage bin so that you can buy bulk instead of buy bags. But you got to apply. You can't, sometimes they are retroactive, CAPE is. So it depends on each county. Like Bull County, usually ours is in the fall, but they may go back 6 months from the application date and then go forward 3 months from the application date. So you've either done something already or you've got 3 months to do it after you're approved. It's kind of how we do it in Bull County. Most counties are similar, but not all. So just keep that in mind. But there's some really good programs available through that CAPE opportunity there. Another one that I'll mention is on-farm energy incentives. That's through Ag Development Board as well. That's going to be something if you're looking at adding solar panels on your farm, and you've got a need. Like, it's not just something that goes back to your house to run your house and maybe sell energy to, but say you're running grain bins and you have grain fans, or you've got freezers, or you've got coolers on your farm for produce or meats, and you want to try and power that off the grid. That's the kind of stuff that on-farm energy incentives program can do. I will say that you'll have to have an energy audit done before that. But once the energy audit is complete, it scores your application and says, yep, we identify X, Y, and Z as opportunities to make this farm more energy efficient. And so those are the things that it will help pay for. It's, again, these are all cost share programs. So you spend some money up front, you get some of that money back as a reimbursement later. But it's one of those things where you need to figure on, between 6 months and a year before you may see that money. So keep that in mind too. Can I get by this long, or do I need to take out a loan to be able to do these things and then pay off that loan once the money comes back in? On-farm water, that's one that's kind of in limbo. I think there is a track that's kind of established now to keep that thing going. It was kind of in limbo for a little while, but the biggest thing that thing is going to do is it's designed to help farmers use the water, capture and use water on their farms. So it won't pay for a pond, but if you already have a pond on your farm and you'd like to use it to irrigate produce fields or water livestock, it can help do that. It'll help get the water from that pond to your fields. So think like small pumps for fruit and vegetable producers. It would be like drip irrigation, that kind of thing. It's capturing and using the water, but using the water efficiently. So it wouldn't just be flood irrigation that it would help do. It would be the drip irrigation, overhead sprinklers, that kind of thing. And then the last piece of KDA under the Kentucky Office of Ag Policy is going to be KAFC, which is the Kentucky Ag Finance Corporation. So we've already talked a little bit about interest rates in this rising market that we see now. 8, 9, 10% interest rates is what I'm hearing people talk about whenever I visit with clients now. The low interest rate programs that they have through KAFC is going to be around 2.75%. And that's usually going to be amortized over 7 or over 15 years max. So the nicest thing, if you're a beginning farmer, think about buying buying the farm. So if you're looking at buying a piece of property that's farmland or barns or ag improvements, it doesn't pay for homes. But if you've got farmland that you'd like to buy, it could have a home with it, but you're going to have to finance that through another third party lender. But the farmland and the farm buildings can fall under this beginning farmer program to buy land. As long as you've not owned land already for 10 years or less, or more, 10 years or more, if you're less than that period, then that program can fit you. And again, that's 2.75% up to 15 years, a maximum of $250,000. And it'll only do 50% of the loan. So if it's a $500,000 piece of property, then 250,000 of that will be ag finance. Then you need to have an ag credit, farm credit, rural lender, private bank to cover the rest. And ag finance is really good at working with participating lenders to make sure that they, it's a pretty easy application to follow, and they really want to partner with banks and lenders to make it happen. Another one that they do is ag infrastructure. So think about things like this has done a lot of poultry barns. If I don't know if anybody's interested in that, but that's one thing it's done quite a bit of, is build poultry barns for producers, commercial houses. And then the last one there, diversification through entrepreneurship and ag. So that would be if you're looking at anything that's, maybe not a commodity based market. So agritourism is something that I've seen used here in the past. So just keep that in mind. This is one of those things where if you've got questions, talk to one of us at KCARD. We'd be happy to kind of help think through, is this a good fit? And then make the introductions through the staff members at Ag Finance and the Ag Development Board to say, hey, we've got a person that's interested in this. Where do you see it fitting in? And we usually let them kind of guide us on where to go from there. The last one that I want to mention about state agencies that are out there here in Kentucky is, like I said, county extension agents, county ag agents, county horticulture agents. Of course, we've got the really thing that we're very blessed with in Kentucky is having a lot of service providers, technical service providers. And ag agents are really the place to go to if you've got production questions, want to figure out how to take care of a piece of land, grow a crop, raise livestock. They're the ones who, even if they don't know things, there's a lot of, like, each county usually has their own agents. If they can't answer the questions, they can go to one of UK or KSU's primary sites or satellite sites, and there's extension agent specialists there that are, that's their thing. Like, there's a specialist for cattle, several specialists for cattle, specialists for small ruminant animals, turf grass, lawns, hay, all those things are specialists for. So if the county agent can't help you, they can find someone who can. And then the last piece that I'll mention on the subject of cooperative extension would be Kentucky State University has a small scale farm grant program. So that's, if you look it up, just type in KSU small scale farm grant program in Google or whatever your search engine is, it should pop up a link to take you to the website to tell you about this program. It's up to $5,000. And it's one of the few grants where if you apply for and receive it and you're approved, you get a $5,000 check, maximum of a $5,000 check, to go out and buy whatever it is you need to buy. You don't have to spend the money first and get reimbursed. Whatever you identify as wanting to use that program for, you get the money up front to do and not take it out of your personal or farm accounts. It won't do a lot of things. Like, one of the biggest things is it won't buy anything with an engine. So just mark that one off right off the bat. Tractors, tillers, anything with an engine, it won't help with. and they don't always do things even that are attachments. So if you're looking at like a PTO powered tiller or something like that, it's probably not going to do that either. But what it does do is it helps with things like if you're raising produce and you need to have a walk-in cooler to store that in between market days. Maybe you need to go pick it on a Monday, but you won't go to a market until Friday or Saturday, and you need a cooler to be able to preserve it, that quality. Walk-in coolers are a big option. Another one is freezers. If you're raising livestock for meat, buying freezers is one that I've seen a lot of people utilize it for. And this is totally separate to CAPE, that County Ag Improvement Program I mentioned earlier, totally a separate program. So a lot of people, you can buy freezers with CAPE as well, but if you can get this, that's a great way to utilize this money and then use CAPE for something else if you like. The other one that I'll mention that's kind of off the wall is sugar shacks. If anyone grows, if anyone collects maple sap, which I know sap season was really, really short this year because it's been so warm. We didn't really have much of a winter other than like a few days around Christmas. But if anyone collects sap and is looking to add value to that sap by turning it into sugar, syrup or maple sugar, it'll help pay for things like a sugar shack. So evaporators, reverse osmosis machines, bottling equipment. It won't buy the bottles, won't buy the labels, but it'll pay for some of the equipment to turn your sap into syrup. And there's different programs within this. So there's an agroforestry model. So if you're doing mushrooms and producing that in your woods, or herbs, collecting herbs and turning them into teas, that kind of thing, that's one track, agroforestry option. If you're adding value, so that would be the sap to syrup, or I'm selling my produce locally and I need a walk-in cooler, or I'm doing meats and you need freezers. That added value added is where a lot of that stuff is going to be funded. And then they also have an organic path as well. So if you're an organic producer, it can help with that as well. Those are the biggest ones that I see people use. The last one is going to be if your county is identified as food insecure, then you got another pot of money. So it's still $5,000 max with a $10,000 max life. Like that's the lifetime cap is $10,000. So you get $5,000 2 years in a row and you're done. But it's a really good program, and I want to make sure everybody knows about it. It is a bi-monthly application deadline. So I think the last application deadline was April 1st. So the next one will be June 1st, and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind. Joni Nelson is going to be the contact person that you'll see if you go to their website. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us. Reach out to Joni. Her email is provided on the KSU website for this program, but we're happy to help with this one. It's a really easy application too, like 2 pages and you're done. So I've talked a lot about a lot of different things, really the alphabet soup of agriculture in Kentucky. What I want to switch gears to and talk about for just a second is record keeping. A lot of the stuff that I've mentioned is going to have a record keeping component to it. So how can you keep those records to satisfy these programs that you might be interested in? Or, it's April 15th, taxes, if you all already haven't done your taxes, I haven't. But if you're looking at April 15th being in 5 days and your taxes are due, these are some things to think about. It won't really help you much for last year's taxes, but we're still early enough on in this year, 2023, to implement some of these things through the growing season to be able to keep better records to have for your operation whenever it's 2023 tax time next year. So what's your fancy for keeping records? I've got 3 pictures on here if you all can see them. The first one is a farm management record book. The next one there in the middle is going to be a QuickBooks preview. That's what QuickBooks would look like. That's kind of like the Cadillac version. And then somewhere in the middle is going to be an Excel ledger, or you can use Google Sheets, but some kind of spreadsheet ledger book that you can use for your operation. That's what I use for my farm. After doing this for 12 years, I've just kind of gotten in a groove of using Excel. That's how I keep all my records for my farm. But if you'd rather write things down on pen and paper, the farm management record keeping book, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's really the thing to think about with what your fancy is and how you want to keep your records is, if you don't like it, or if it's a struggle to kind of get into a rhythm with, you're probably not going to do it, or it's going to be a really big chore for you to want to sit down and do it. If it's something that just comes natural and it's something you're comfortable with, that's whenever it's, hey, I've got an hour tonight to sit down at my computer or pull out the record keeping book, jot down what I've done for the last 4 weeks. It's something that's intuitive to you and it's easy to do. So there's really 4 things that you want to keep track of when you're taking records. It's how much money I make. Well, I'm going to hit pause on that 4 thing. Think about it like this. How much money do I spend and how much money do I make? And then within that, you're going to break it down a little bit further. So revenue, that's how much money you make. Cost of goods sold that you see on the slide, and operating expenses, that's how much money you spend. And then the net income is going to be revenue minus cost of goods sold minus operating expenses. That's going to be your bottom line number. That's how much money you either make or lose on your farming operation in a given year. Excuse me. So a little bit about revenue. I've got a few pictures up here, and then we've got a little quiz here at the end. It might be a little harder to do it over Zoom, but we'll kind of throw a few things out once we get there. But revenue, here's a produce example. I'm selling my kale for $2 a bunch, I think is what that says. How many of those bunches do I sell in a given year? That's going to be a yield tracker. But it's also going to correlate to, if I sell them all for $2 a bunch and I sold 100 bunches, that's $200 that I made off of selling kale. So that also keeps up with your revenue number as well. If you can itemize things, it's one of those things where, you don't have to track it that in depth, but the more details you can have, or the more details you can add from year to year, maybe this year you get in the habit of keeping really good, just money in, money out records. And then next year you add in, well, how do I make that money? I sold this many bunches of this many dozen ears of sweet corn, this many beef animals, this many dozen eggs. Think about things like that. And then that correlates to money, but also correlates to yields that you're raising off your farm. The nice thing is too, that helps you plan for the next year. So if you're keeping up with those dozen eggs, maybe you're like, well, I sold this many. I know that my chickens can raise this many. Maybe there's an imbalance there. I either need to add more egg layers, or I need to not have as many hens next year. I know a lot of people I've heard say it's hard to get chicks, or it's been a challenge. They've had to have them ordered a long time to be able to get them. So maybe that's something you think about next year. Do I really need to have 100 layers, or can I get by with 50? That's all things that these records can help you do. It's not just money, it's production. But we're talking about it in the revenue sense in this example. So I'm going to switch gears here. So we talked about the money that we make. Well, what does it take for us to raise or produce those things to be able to sell? That's really what you need to think about when it comes to cost of goods sold, or COGS. What it takes for me to generate this crop, raise that animal, produce that dozen eggs. That's what COGS are. So as keeping the produce example going with this picture, we've got transplants. So did I buy those transplants, or did I raise them from scratch? If I bought them, then, however much those cost per pot, that's how much I'm going to record. If I seeded them myself, well, how much was the seed? How much was the potting media or potting soil? How much were those little cups that they're planted into? If you're using a greenhouse to do this, how much did it cost me to heat that greenhouse? All those things are things to think about with COGS, or cost of goods sold. And then switching gears, on the other side of what you spend is operating costs. So think of this as your overhead expenses. So I mentioned fuel, that can kind of go in a couple of different ways. A lot of times I will put fuel as an operating cost, but in the case of that greenhouse, if I'm only using that greenhouse and only burning propane or diesel or however I run those heaters, if I'm only doing that for a couple months out of the year and it's only going into that greenhouse, maybe that is a cog. Otherwise, like fuel and oil that you're going to use through tractors, delivery of vehicles, all those things, that all will go as an operating expense. Advertising, if you're doing any social media campaigns and paid promotions for those, that's where that would go, is advertising. Insurance, if you've got any farm insurance, product liability insurance, some farmers markets require insurance to be purchased or you to contribute to that overall farmers market plan that they have, that would go there. Licenses and permits, that's going to be like if you, maybe you might sell prepared food at a farmer's market booth and you've got to have a health department inspection and review each year to be able to do that. That's where that permit or license would go. Maybe you've got a business license through your county to be able to sell things or your city. That's a requirement. That will be where that goes. A couple others that I'll mention, repair and maintenance. So anything that you have to spend to keep your equipment running, keep your buildings operational, that's going to be a repair and maintenance expense. Subscriptions and dues, like farmers market dues, that would go there. If you subscribe to any associations, Hort Council, or excuse me, Kentucky Fruit and Vegetable Growers, Kentucky Cattlemen's Association, Kentucky Sheep and Goat Associations, all those different dues would go there. Travel expenses, I will mention that one for just a second. So think of that as not just if you go to a conference, but your travel from the farm to wherever you sell your products at. You can count that, keep up with the miles. Maybe you use your vehicle to drive to work and back, or deliver the kids to school and pick them up in the afternoons, but you also use that same vehicle to drive from the farm to the farmer's market or to deliver to a restaurant. Well, keep up with how many times you go each year, figure out how many miles that is, and then you can count that mileage as a travel expense for your farming operation. But all those are examples of operating expenses. So I mentioned a quiz, okay? So I won't, usually if we're in person, I'd say, well, point out a few things here and what they are and what category they fall under. But I'll throw a few out, and if you all see any that I miss, feel free to unmute and share those as well. But before I do that, I always say that I feel like there's nothing more Kentucky than a farm mall and a tobacco field. At least that's my idea, my nostalgia of this state. Tobacco may be a changing crop, but here's a 140 in today's Kentucky anyway, keeping the produce fields clean of weeds. So the tractor, we'll use that as an example first. If a piece breaks on that tractor, it's going to be a repair and maintenance. So it would go under an operating cost, operating expense. The seeds that were used to plant those crops that you see growing there in those nice straight rows, that's going to be a cog. Any fertility that was used, whether it's organic, commercial fertilizers, any fertility used here would be a cog as well. Same thing with any chemicals applied to keep those free of weeds. If you wanted to use that, switch from chemical control to mechanical control, that's a cog. Fuel that goes in the tractor, I would put that as a operating expense. What else? The labor. Somebody brought that up in a session, and I think that's noteworthy. So the person driving that tractor, if that person is the owner of that farm, or one of the owners, I would consider that as an operating expense, because they're going to have, if they're drawing a management salary from the farm, paying themselves, they're usually the management draw. And so I would consider that operating expense. But if that person on that tractor is a hired hand, you're just telling them, hey, show up at 8 o'clock, sit on that tractor until 5 o'clock and go home, then I would consider that a cog. Today, they may be driving the tractor. In 4 weeks, whenever the lettuce is ready to harvest, or 90 days when you're starting to see tomatoes ready to pick, that same labor may be hired as packaging and prep labor, but still it's labor hired. It's not your own labor as an operator and an owner. So I would consider that COGS labor then. So with that, I want to throw this up for a minute. This is my contact information. That's my email address. That's my work cell phone number. And then if you want to talk to someone else, there's the general KCARD line as well as the general KCARD phone number. If you use one of those, you'll talk to a lady named Laura. She's very knowledgeable. She's a coworker of mine. She'll be perfectly happy to take your information and connect you up with the right person, or feel free to reach out to me directly. And if I can't help you for some reason, I'll find someone on my team that will or can. I'll leave that up for just a minute more. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to pull up a PDF that I have that I want to share with you all as well. And let's see. Everybody good on the contact information? If so, I'm gonna, if you didn't get it, don't worry, we'll get it to you. I'm gonna pull this back up here. So this is a beginning farmer resources page. We've also got one that's veteran focused as well, but I wanted to show this one up just to start with today. A lot of the stuff you see here is going to be very similar to the veteran page as well. We've already talked about a lot of these things on here today. FSA, NRCS with EQIP, we've talked about. We covered Ag Finance Corporation, Kentucky Department of Agriculture, CAPE, Small Scale Farm Grant. SOAR is one we didn't mention. If anyone is in Eastern Kentucky, there's 54 counties that are identified there that have special funding. It's a low interest loan program. So I think that it's been a while since I've looked at it, but it's like 1 or 2% interest, I think for 4 years. The first year you only pay an interest payment. The rest of the 3 years you pay back principal and interest. But 1-2% interest is really, really cheap in today's world. Then I mentioned the KCARD's grant facilitation program as well. So those are funding resources. I'm going to scroll back up and cover a few things that I didn't cover in the presentation as well. Of course, we talked about Cooperative Extension Service, KCARD. Part of UK is the Center for Crop Diversification. So if you click on this, they have some really, really good tools there for fruit and vegetable producers. They've got a source there to get prices, both from Kentucky farmers markets, sampled across the state throughout the entire growing season each year. You can see what's in season. You can see what those crops are bringing at those markets. It's a really good resource. If you're doing things more on a wholesale level, they also report the produce auction prices each week throughout the state of Kentucky. So that's a really good service as well to help decide what you want to price things at for your farm. The other thing that it also does is it provides budgets. So they have some really good budgets there's about 12 summer vegetables that are on that let's see if I can pull it up here real quick while we're talking. I got a lot of tabs open. Don't judge me for it here, but we'll see if it'll load here while we're talking. I'll just show you real quick. I think that'd probably do it more justice than trying to explain it. So I mentioned those pricing tools. Price reports is where you go for that. There's your Kentucky Farmers Market price reports. It also has historical data too. So it'll go back a year or two to report that as well. Not many markets are open yet, but you can look back at last year and see what things were doing. Same thing with the produce auctions. This is a new one, the farm to food bank information. That's new since I've been on it, and I haven't investigated it much. And then they also do other states. So Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, all those are on here as well. The other thing that I'll mention, I'll go back here and show you the budgets as well. So this budget tab here, if you click on it, and then they have a large scale option for vegetable and melon budgets and a small scale. So large scale is going to be acres if you're growing anything on an acre basis. Small scale usually is like 100-foot rows. So 100-foot row of tomatoes. I think sweet corn is like 5 100-foot rows. But most of them are going to be 100-foot row basis. So if you're doing things on a smaller scale, that might be where you could look. One thing I would say, you know, they were last updated in 2017. Commodity or sales prices have gone up since then in a lot of cases, as well as input prices that produce that crop. So the seed may be higher, fertility may be higher, chemicals may be higher. Just keep that in mind. I would encourage you to validate those numbers and use your own numbers, but it's a starting point. That's the key here. Plug in your own numbers and it'll give you a result that's pretty accurate for your farm based on your yield and your inputs and sales price. And then as we scroll through here, there's a lot of other options as well. You know, cherry tomatoes, grapes, wine production, ornamental crops. There's a lot of things here, but go to this website, check it out. Like I said, it's a really good opportunity there to see what's going on. Another thing that I'll mention briefly is market ready training program. That's also through UK. Those extension specialists that I mentioned earlier, Tim Woods and his staff help put that on. I think Tim is out of the country right now traveling, like on sabbatical, but his staff is really good at putting together these programs. I don't know when the next one is, but market ready training program and that website there is where you want to go to see that. It helps you think through things like what does my customer want and how my crop is presented. You know, if you're looking at produce, does he want tomatoes packaged in 10-pound boxes or 20-pound boxes? Does he want them just breaking so they're still green and they're starting to turn color, or does he want them, you know, red ripe running out the box because they're still ripe? Those are things that he helps you think through how to make sure that your markets are well taken care of and you're doing what your customer wants of you. But how do you ask those questions to make sure you're doing what they want? Organic Association of Kentucky, any organic producer here, I would encourage you to look at them for a resource. They've got some really good people that work there at that organization, really good people on staff, a lot of really good resources to look at your leisure to see what's going on the organic side of production. With that, I know I've covered a lot of stuff. If anyone's interested, I do have some stuff we can talk about business planning briefly. I know there's a couple of people mentioned that early on. Our business plan, I'll just talk about it real quick here, kind of 50,000 foot level. If anyone's interested in any business planning at all through KCARD, we have a really good business plan development guide. I didn't come up with it, so I'm not saying it's really good because I did it, but I use it every day. It's got a list of questions. It divides a business plan into 4 sections: description of your business, a marketing plan, management and operations plan, and then financials. But each one of those 4 sections has a group of questions. You answer those questions as you're working through the document. And then at the end, you've pretty well got a business plan done. If you get stumped on anything, KCARD's here to help. Taryn, myself, the other folks on staff, that's what we're here for, is to answer those questions. But it's a really good tool to put together a business plan for your project, for your operation. I say it's one of those things where, you know, you might do it now. Maybe you don't touch it for a month. Maybe you don't touch it for a year, but that's okay. It's a living document. Whenever you pull that thing back out a year from now, April 2024, dust it off, you can look back through it and say, yeah, I hit that goal, or I was short of this one, but here's why. And you can use it to keep up with where you've at where you're at today, where you've been, and where you want to go. So I'll just mention that briefly. And then with that, we've got a few minutes here. I'll open it up for questions. If y'all have any, feel free to ask away, or I'll check the chat here too. Looks like Taryn's been keeping up with the chat, so thank you, Taryn, for doing that. One thing I did mention that I will real quick before I stop and let everybody think for a second, but with that AgVets program that I mentioned, that KCARD and KDA and several other organizations are a part of, we do have an educational program that's available to you all. So two of them actually. So one would be if you all are retired and you're a veteran, we have a mentor-mentee program. Depending on what you're interested in, we've got a group of mentors that have kind of volunteered across the state of Kentucky to be a resource for you. It's a 9-month commitment. So we ask that you meet, monthly preferably, but at least quarterly during that 9-month period to kind of talk about, it's a person you can use as a resource to bounce ideas off of, go through trials and tribulations with. Maybe they've been through it before. They can help advise you on how they got through it. Or maybe it's an opportunity that you like, I really want to capitalize on this. How should I go forward about it? They can help from a real world experience, the lessons that stick with you, because there's the school of hard knocks. They can help you with those things and advice. And then the second one that I'll mention is we have a stipend program. So that stipend program is going to cover up to $400 worth of eligible expenses to attend some educational event. That might be a conference. I know we're kind of at the end of conference season, but if you got anything you want to go through the summer, if there's anything you want to go through during the fall, winter, and early next spring months as well, think about that. $400 for registration fees, travel and lodging, and your mileage. We tell us how many miles it took for you to get from your home to that event, and we can count that as well. We can't cover meals, so any meals that you would eat at those conferences are on your own. But like I said, registration fees, lodging, and travel, all eligible up to $400. Any questions? I know I covered a lot of stuff, but. Any other announcements that if there's no questions, any announcements anybody has, or this is kind of a time to network amongst yourselves too. I talked a little longer than I'd planned to, but if you all have anything you want to run by each other, I mean, this is a time to mention those things too.
Spencer, I guess I've just got a question. Has all of the folks that are on here, are you guys currently Kentucky Proud members or Homegrown by Heroes?
I'm both Kentucky Proud and Homegrown by Hero.
Great.
Same here, Kentucky Proud and Homegrown by Heroes.
Mr. England, I think, weren't you, you had, what was it you had?
About 400-pound of persimmon.
Yes, I was going to say, were you able to get a hold of one of those wineries?
I did not, but we utilized the fruit by drying it.
Okay. Because we did have a winery, whatever, that was supposedly very interested in it, and they were supposed to reach out to you, but.
They never did, but it happens. We still, these springs are so iffy. We're still waiting on this next freeze coming next week. Long ways forecast. oddly enough, is calling for the low 20s, so that's gonna put the kibosh on probably everything we grow, so we'll have to wait and see.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Have you had any damage or anything so far? I know we've had a
No,
couple of hard freezes.
Right. The only thing we've lost so far is about 90% of the pawpaws. We've got 2 acres of pawpaws. 8 acres of persimmons, about 10 acres of Asian pears, acre apple, quince, medlar, a lot of exotics, and we do really well with it. But as far as the spring, these flip-flop springs has only been taking place since 2014. If you remember, in 2014 was the polar vortex. It actually dropped down to -22 here in Kentucky. And that caused significant damage in the orchards. And then we had the 2020, May the 9th, 2020 freeze out where it dropped down to 25 degrees. Everything was in leaf. So we've had some devastating years of bad weather.
Yeah, well, I've got my fingers crossed between now and they always say Derby Day, so I got my fingers crossed for you.
I hope so. I need all the prayers and good wishes we can get. But
Mr. England, you said that
we can't control.
Right. You said you've seen some forecasts saying next week's supposed to get in the 20s in?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm itching to go plant something, but if that's the case, probably better just leave everything in the shed for now.
Yeah, I just found that out about 2 hour ago, watching the weather, and we've been planting daily, so you know, all we can do is hope for the best.
Yeah, well, we've got some cold nature crops already planted, and thought about planting some sweet corn here this week, but still might. If it makes it, it makes it. If not, then we'll just replant it, I guess. But
That's right. Somebody asked me one time, why do I keep planting? Because I told them my honest answer is because that's what farmers do. I mean, we don't have a choice.
yeah, we're eternal optimists, I think.
We are.
Well, if anybody, I won't keep anybody on if there's no other questions, but if you all need anything from us, feel free to reach out. If you have any questions, let us know. You know, after this, we're around for anything. If it's now's not the time, you know, we're happy to answer questions whenever. So thank you all for coming out tonight. If we can do anything for you, let us know, and wish you all the best in the growing season coming up. So thanks for coming out.
Spencer, great job. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.